God, we made it. But where's Dr. Kleiner? Dr. Kleiner, let us out!
Alex? Gordon? My God, how did you get here? And when?
What's wrong?
My dear, I had given up hope of ever seeing you again.
I was afraid we might not make it either. I think the teleport exploded just as we were porting out.
Indeed, it did. And the repercussions were felt far and wide, but that was over a week ago.
What do you mean? Gordon and I were just there a minute ago.
Fascinating. We seem to have developed a very slow teleport. This suggests an entirely new line of investigation.
A week? Then what have we missed?
A great deal, my dear. The blow you struck at Nova Prospekt was taken as a signal to begin the uprising.
But what about my father?
Well, that is most troubling. According to the Vortigaunts, he is a prisoner at the Citadel.
We've got to get my father out.
Barney has been leading a push with that very aim in mind. And another of your friends arrived several days ago.
Dog, you made it! Good boy.
So there, you see? It's not all hopeless.
I wish I shared your optimism, Doctor.
Doc, come in. Are you there? Hey, Doc, are you there?
Yes, Barney, and I'm no longer alone. Alex and Gordon have just arrived.
Well, man, that's good news. I almost gave you guys up for lost. We're planning to set up a staging area for attacking the Citadel.
Gordon and Dog can head your way. I want to get Dr. Kleiner somewhere safer. Then I'll meet up with you.
I'll take all the help I can get. Aw, crap! Incoming! Go on, get going!
Okay, Gordon, you heard him. I'll catch up with you as soon as I get Dr. Kleiner settled.
Just a minute. I can't leave without Lamar.
Oh, no.
Where did she get to?
Go on, Gordon. I'll take care of this. Gordon, take care of yourself out there. Dr. Kleiner, there's really no time.
She's
There are plenty to go around.
only one hitty.
So I'm just going to point at the elephant in the room and say, hey look, an elephant. Yes, there were prisoners in Nova Prospekt. Yes, the teleporter did explode. Yes, all the prisoners in Nova Prospekt are now dead. Now that that's understood, let's keep going. You may notice that we have Dog with us, which is not really much of a comfort because, as has been established, Dog's AI just runs around and picks up things. The only time the dog will be useful is in very scripted occasions, so yeah, look out for that. It's, maybe I shouldn't rag on them too much. It's a lot of trouble to animate this kind of model, and I'm sure that it took them like hours and hours and hours of effort. But at the same time, though, like, I really can't get too excited over something that can only actually function when you have something very obvious for it to function against. So, yep, here we go, Dog. Look at how organically you pick up that phasing through the floor car. Amazing. I mean, like, if you think about it just in story terms, Dog is actually pretty awesome. Like, they give him opportunities to do a whole lot of crazy, nutty things. It's just, you know, yeah. The structure of the game is meant to be immersive, like, sort of free-roaming and everything happening organically. And so, Dog's entire nature is sort of juxtaposed against that. Everything about Dog would be better suited to cutscenes in a more traditional sense. Or if they wanted to do it this way, just have the entire game play out like this and have Gordon not participate at all, really. The fact that they give the player... Oh, hello. The fact that they give the player the ability to actually, like, move around and function within the world suggests that should theoretically be something where the agency of the player is actually used to some effect, but it isn't. In some ways, the agency of the player is almost a hindrance to the world that they're trying to make. Also, check out this crazy TV. It's weird. I think what's happening is, like, normally it's supposed to explode when you come close to it, and it's just kind of confused about whereabouts in the world it is because I yanked it instead of coming close to it. But anyway, we're about to come across the big thing of this chapter. Everything's got a thing, and this thing is going to be... yeah, we're about to get ourselves some groupies. Or you might say, slavering sycophants. Who could really say?
Well, Gordon Freeman. And about time, too. They're never gonna make a stalker out of me.
Stalkers are... like you might have seen in Nova Prospect on the TV, there was that one kind of emaciated looking thing with a robot face. That's a stalker. Yeah, I don't think anyone would want to have a stalker made out of them, if I'm going to be honest, but...
In the abyss, with lidless eyes forever staring at the dark, ignorant and doomed despite their eternal vigilance. Would we model ourselves on the trilobite? Are all the accomplishments of humanity fake?
Yeah! Gordon Freeman, you're here.
Dr. Freeman? We're coming with you. With you here, Dr. Freeman, we can finally make some headway.
So, what even happened with all these people? Did they have somebody, like, on, like, a giant, like, sewing machine putting together, like, regulation, like, rebel outfits for everybody? Did they just raid a factory of some kind where they were making beanie caps? I mean, a lot can happen in a week, I realize, but this is all a little bit ridiculous with how everybody is...
You lead the way.
Well, okay, like, back in the sewers, like in the canals, we did see some people decked out in these colors, so maybe they've been making these uniforms for a while. But when you really think about it in terms of, like, how the story is going, the whole idea of, like, rebelling against uniformity and just, you know, mechanization of people, does it really seem, like, appropriate for everyone just to be kind of running around in the same kind of uniform? It does seem a bit counterintuitive to the whole idea of, yeah, we're individuals, we're unique. Nobody gonna make a robot out of us. So yeah, hopper mines. They're, well, I mean, they're basically just another sort of obstacle similar to the roller mines on the highway.
We can use them against the Combine.
They explode kind of like an explosive barrel, and if you pull them, then they plant themselves suddenly loyal to you. As if, like, there's some sort of routine in the gravity gun that can reset the allegiance of these things. Is that unusual? Does that seem far-fetched? What is far-fetched in this world, even?
Between the Burgess Shale and an eon's worth of mud. In order to be true to our nature and our destiny, things, we have outgrown our cradle. It is futile. True sustenance awaits us among the stars, and only the universal union that small minds call the Combine can carry us there.
Yeah, enough of that. It is kind of amazing that when everything's falling apart around him, a brain is still out here making speeches. It's as if he thinks that everything's just gonna go back to normal or something. Maybe he thinks he can break people's morale by talking to them. It's like, no. No, really, no. Oh yeah, by the way, we saw these guys before, but yeah, Striders. They're gonna be a problem in droves. Like, it cannot be understated just how much of a problem Striders are going to be. These new scanner things, like the things that are completely unlike the camera scanners before, like these things are actually a product of the Striders. Almost like something that they're shooting out in order to act as their eyes and support units, I suppose. Oddly, like the ones with the camera flashes, I think are more or less completely absent now. As if they just kind of got discontinued and upgraded in the time that it took for Gordon to get from point A to point B. Yeah, I don't know. You can sort of tell that there are some ideas that Valve had that were just being like swapped in and out and replaced, and they were trying to sort of just make a cohesive narrative with the pieces and parts that they had kept instead of just all the stuff that they had thrown away. It's really tough to say how much of this was Valve's intention and how much of it was just, you know, here's what we got, let's build a story around it. But I guess that's sort of a lot of storytelling is just, you know, here's what we have and how do we make all this make sense. I wonder if maybe I should talk about the actual strategy aspect of leading around these goobers. But honestly, I don't know. I don't think so. You have one button. You can tell them to go to a place, you can double tap it to tell them to come back to you. Or, in like 5 seconds at best, they'll just ignore the order that you gave them and come back to you anyhow. They are infamous. Like, it was like something that people were talking about all the time, about just how obstructive and how much of a pest these guys were, constantly like getting in your space and you're having to shove them aside in order to actually get anywhere. That hasn't entirely been my experience, but oh look, it's this guy again.
Refusal to collaborate is simply a refusal to grow, an insistence on suicide, if you will.
Yeah, it seems that he's a bit confused about the terms that people are using. Yeah, I can see how somebody might think that collaborator is actually a positive thing, so let me correct you. You are a traitor. How about that? Let's see you kind of put a positive spin on that. But oh well, I'm just rambling. This guy will get his due in time. Really, it's a question of, even if we do earn back our independence, what even will there be left to pick up? Like, what pieces will we even be left with once all is said and done? Like, there is just so much, like, environmental devastation. All the living spaces are polluted or infested. It's like, how do you even begin to rebuild after all of this? Or do you rebuild? Or do you just take what you've been given and you just try to make a new world out of it? A new society with new rules and new ideas, basically. Having gone through a bit of a disaster ourselves is something that we have to consider as well. Like, do we take what we've learned from the suffering that we've endured? Or do we just go back and we try to restore the status quo having learned nothing? Remember, this all started because of the errors of man. Experimentation on things we barely understood, just for the sake of curiosity. What's to say that this new scientific world that we're entering into won't invite further problems? Anyway, maybe I should actually talk about the gameplay. Or maybe I shouldn't.
Reload, Dr. Freeman.
It's all, how you say... It's what we've seen before, except now we've got these NPC hanger-ons, these doodle heads. And everything is like, yeah. You can see the Combine putting locks on everything in order to sort of herd people through particular avenues. And I assume it's meant to be some sort of tactical thing so that they can restrict the access of individuals. But at the same time, of course, it serves our purposes in making sure that we don't wander around and get lost. Everywhere we go is where we're meant to go. Thanks to the fact that the Combine are sort of shepherding us along. And by extension, of course, the developers at Valve. You may notice, in fact, that one of the big features of these Ruined City 17 maps is that the Citadel walls are just crawling further and further out. Even as society is rising up to destroy it, the Citadel yawns further on like a hungry beast. And, yeah. As mentioned in the thread, Combine technology is meant to appear almost parasitic by nature, constantly reaching out and taking from things, and sort of subsuming it into the whole. Nice music, by the way. And it's gone. Another behavior I should mention of your NPC allies, which you might notice off to the sides, is that they're programmed, if they find a weapon that they consider to be better than the one they're currently holding, they'll swap it out and make some sort of like cheery comment about it. So NPCs can hold either submachine guns, shotguns, or pulse rifles, in that order. They will always consider pulse rifles to be the creme de la creme, which shows a fundamental lack of taste, if you ask me. Honestly, I think it would be more effective if I had an entire squad of shotgunners. But you know what? I'm this big military commander, but I can't speak a blessed thing. You almost kind of wonder if that's intentional, the fact that Gordon Freeman's tactical skills are so limited that he can only say, go here or follow me. You are basically just taking a science nerd and asking him to suddenly be a military general. And, well, that's sort of going to have predictable results, won't it? Gordon Freeman is not a trained assassin. Gordon Freeman is not a trained soldier. He's just a guy with a great deal of athletic skill, constantly being thrust into situations he can't entirely get himself out of. Like he's just blessed with simultaneously bad luck and also the best of luck even. That despite being thrust into catastrophe after catastrophe, he always is able to get to where he needs to go. And it seems like everything's just kind of laid out in order to funnel him along that curvy line. But nonetheless, it is a line. Every branch leads to a dead end and just carries him back to where he began. And that's obviously, of course, like you might say, the machinations of the G-Man, or maybe some other invisible force beyond our comprehension. Or maybe it's just nothing at all. Maybe the developers have created this idea of like a big shadowy council or whatever, like just in order to hide the fact that they've created a story where they have absolute freedom and yet no freedom at all. You will never lose control of Gordon Freeman, but then you never have the ability to go anywhere except where you're intended to go, so what's even the point? Gordon Freeman could just as easily be a character in a cutscene, and in fact that might make him better off, because at least then he'd have a little bit of agency, even just to go around and stare at things in a certain manner. Like the privilege to sneer at things, or to give slanty eyes, or to cringe, or to look in shock. Like even those basic privileges are those afforded to a cutscene type of character that Gordon Freeman doesn't have. Even an internal monologue of some kind would grant him more freedom to express himself than just being an empty shell who doesn't speak a word and who we never actually see.
You got it, Doc. I'm sorry, Freeman.
Hey, everybody, follow Freeman.
And that guy. Yeah, he even, like, we untethered to him because we dropped down, like, 3 feet. I'm not exaggerating when I say that these people are doo-doo heads. Their brains are full of dookie. But you know what? They mean well. And they occasionally offer a degree of firepower in a tense situation. And you know what? That's honestly all you need. You're still gonna have to put in the bulk of the work, of course. Like, you can't just expect them to go off on their own and save the day. But they mean well. They're supportive. They're encouraging. Occasionally, they'll even throw you a med kit if you're desperate. Like, I don't think that Valve intended them to be frustrating or hard to deal with. They honestly really aren't. It's just that at the end of the day, you're under no incentive to actually treat them with any degree of kindness. You can, in fact, just run off ahead and be like, you know, you guys can follow along if you want, whatever. And maybe, yeah, that's all that you need them to be, like, characters who, you know, they're following you because they believe that it's in their best interest, because they want to be the great Gordon Freeman. But at the end of the day, Gordon Freeman does not need them. So the question becomes then, do you actually care for them? Do you try to save them? Or do you just treat them like the annoying tag-ons that they are? I've never been a fan of escort quests. Never have I really been a fan of NPC allies at all. They create a certain degree of unsurety. You don't know whether the AI is going to go for you or for them, and so their predicted movements become harder to gauge. Like, they could just go and, like, run off ahead of you, and sort of, yeah, it's harder to figure out what it is that they're going to do. And I'm not too fond of that myself. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a little bit uptight in general.
It is you, isn't it? Hey, give me a minute. I'm gonna plant some charges and blow this over.
So here we have a little bit of a holdout here. Yeah, this was back in the era when turret sections were actually considered to be, you know, haute couture. The height of design. It'd even be better if, you know, we have two turrets. Maybe we could just a thought program like one of our NPC allies to hop on the other one and provide a bit of a crossfire. Just a thought. But you know what? They do what they can with what they have. Okay, so now we have another problem. The problem is a door.
Good thing you got that suit.
And we are the only ones who can go through an ocean of sludge in order to open it. This kind of circular map design, in order to expand out a map to a larger size, is one that I have mixed feelings about. At the end of the day, this entire segment is just kind of... yeah, it's a room that doesn't actually progress us more than 5 feet once we're done with it. But it provides a certain backdrop to the world that we're in that... yeah, like there's an irradiated junk pile in an underpass or overpass, whichever, right next to a populated civilian sector. honestly, the fact that we're, like, destroying City 17 in the course of our rebellion is somewhat irrelevant because, as is evident, City 17 was messed up to begin with. And it's kind of obvious that our custodians here aren't going to expend any effort to make it better. So, yeah, there is no real guilt over destroying the city in the process of finding our freedom from it, because City 17 was never a place to live. It was just a place for people to slowly die. And once you understand that, then all this destruction just becomes sort of, in hindsight, like completely guilt-free.
Lead on, Freeman. Follow Freeman.
Maybe in the future, we'll find ourselves a place where we can actually live without fear of monsters or constant, like, raids and things like that, but for the time being, we are living in a slightly shinier Mad Max world, and we just kind of have to deal with it. Ah, there. Now see, now they're just infesting it further. You know, when you really think about it, we are not actually making any real progress against the Combine themselves. This entire war...
Dr. Freeman, if you were looking for a place to hole up, it's not safe here anymore. They're shelling the hell out of us. Keep moving, Dr. Freeman. I'll send word you're coming and see you up ahead.
Yeah, as I was saying, though, this war is against the transhuman arm of the Combine Overwatch, or to put it more succinctly, other humans. We are fighting a war against humans and robots, and whoever the Combine are, they're so far off in the distance that we can't even see them, really. All we are doing is waging war against ourselves and hopefully finding a better solution at the end of it. Whether we'll actually be able to harm the Combine themselves is a question that's sort of up in the air. The Combine, like what we would think of as the Combine, have pretty much already left the picture. All we have left are what the Combine left behind in order to basically hold the world while they themselves went off in order to conquer new planets. And that's a sobering thought as well, that all that we're doing here is earning our freedom. Like, we're not actually defeating anyone. We could liberate all of Earth, and the Combine would still be going on their merry way, like, still, like, leading their campaign of conquest. This fight, in the bigger picture, is relatively inconsequential to the Combine themselves. And yet, it is important for us. And you might say that that's all that matters. Humanity's fight is more important than any sort of, like, interstellar fight. Maybe if they ever make a sequel, we could, like, go on to other planets or whatever and maybe strike a blow for intergalactic peace, but for the time being, though, all we're trying to do is give ourselves freedom. freedom to do what? Well, we don't really know for sure yet. Like, it's kind of up in the air as to what kind of society we'll create. Like, I already mentioned that. But in the meantime, all we have to worry about is the society that we're in right now is unbearable. We cannot tolerate living in this world. So whatever world we create will be a better one than the one we've got. And that's sort of all I'm really thinking about at the moment, that, yeah, things are pretty much up in the air.
Okay, come across.
But we're striking a blow for some kind of generic virtue, basically, like, of what's the word? Yeah, independence, freedom, prosperity, the ability to guide our own path. I feel like I'm kind of talking like in circles here. At the end of the day, everything is sort of just a vehicle for gunfights. And, well, I don't know for sure that there is something bigger that we could actually say is the point of this. Like, there is no, like, statement to be said about the human character or anything about, you know, what kind of a person we could be in order to be a better person or whatever. Like, it's not that kind of story. It's very, yeah, it's just almost like an oorah macho fantasy in a different way. The concept of having a very, like, nakedly just an evil enemy that we have no compunctions about fighting. In some ways, I think that's probably why the stylings of the Combine are meant to somewhat evoke, like, Nazism or whatever. Like, you probably have been thinking this as well, that the whole, like, heavy jackets and things like that is very reminiscent of that sort of thing, is because, yeah, nobody's going to be objecting about fighting the Reich, so to speak. It's a very simple sort of coding, you might say. And hey, what were you two guys doing? Like, we were in this big old fight and you guys were just, like, hiding against a wall or something? Weird. Yeah, I should just kind of say that if you ever run out of dudes, then the game will just inexplicably supply you with more dudes. It's very artificial, and they just sort of, like, run up behind you as if they were there all along, or you'll round a corner and hey, more peeps. And never you mind about that, I just kind of fat-fingered the right mouse button. It's kind of the way I hold the mouse. You've probably noticed this before in other occasions where yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe recent events have just kind of got me thinking about that kind of thing a lot. Like, trying to analyze our failures and find a way to become better. Goodness knows, a lot of things have been kind of... yeah. Regardless, though, I'm not opposed to, like, fighting a war for the right reasons. Whether or not there is a better reason than, hey, these guys are all going to kill us if we don't do this, then I couldn't really tell you. And I think perhaps that's sort of the reason why this story is here, that they want to create a story about a war, but not a war where you have to question whether or not you're the baddie. It's a war where there is very obviously a baddie and it is not you. So, yeah. I suspect that's pretty much all that the Combine are. Like, something that is just here as an enemy. I don't know if they really make any kind of statement about, like, transhumanism or the advances of technology, anything like that. It's just that, yeah, like, beep boop evil robots is sort of like, nobody's going to be objecting about shooting, like, mindless machines. That's really all that it is. So, yeah.
I'm not a betting man, but the odds are not good.
I guess I'll see you next time.